Hello, it is January 2025, and of course, because it's January, we're talking about goals, we're talking about resolutions. What do you want to get done in 2025? And all of that is great. However, the energy around all of that tends to dissipate really quickly, sometimes before January is even over. What I want to talk to you about today is a system that has nothing to do with the calendar year and all about actually making progress towards your bigger vision and making sure that you are channeling your energy towards the things that actually really matter to you and not just the things that you think you should be doing or should be putting energy towards, or maybe are connected to old ideas for what you wanted for your life that aren't relevant anymore. It's all based on the method in this book, The 12-Week Year, which was recommended to me by a wonderful coach I worked with a couple of years ago. And this was a total game changer for me. I made an entire video just about why I love the 12-week year. So I'll make sure to link that video in the comments below. All of these goal achievement systems are well and good. However, you really need to find the one that works for you, specifically your personality and how you like to work. The 12-week year is perfect for me, and it, I think, works for a lot of people, and I'll tell you why it really worked well for me. First of all, I tend to have a lot of ideas and a lot of things that I want to do and things that interest me. A lot of things spark my interest and curiosity, and what happens is I get stuck not knowing where to put my time and energy outside of my full-time job. And time is limited, and so what happens is I kind of get stuck in that indecision, or I make a little bit of progress in one direction and then maybe I change my mind and switch to another direction, and not a lot happens. So the 12-week year helps me connect with my bigger vision for what I want in my life, and then make decisions around what are the things that are actually going to feed that vision and help me make progress towards bringing that into reality. So that's one thing. The other thing it helped me a lot with is FOMO. Because I want to do all these things, learn all these things, experience all these things, when I'm doing one thing, I'm kind of suffering from FOMO about another thing. Because the 12-week year helps you really focus in on just a couple goals every 12 weeks, FOMO kind of goes away because number one, you're too focused to really think about those other things. But number two, what I realize is like so much can happen in 12 weeks when you're really focused, that if I want to get to those other things eventually, I can devote a 12-week year to it and big things can happen. So I don't really need to worry about it. So what I'm going to do with you all is walk you through my 12-week year process. So you can use that as an example if you want to give it a try, though I definitely recommend also getting the book and using it as a guide. What I show you might not be exactly what the book teaches, because I've done it a few times and kind of adapted it a little bit to my own system, but I think it's still pretty close. First of all, what is the 12-week year? Instead of looking at a goal time period as an entire year, like what is going to happen in 2025, you're only looking at 12 weeks at a time. And that helps create this really strong time container around your goals so that you have a little bit more urgency. And for me, that is incredibly helpful in creating discipline and sticking to what I want to achieve, even when the circumstances aren't ideal. For example, if I'm feeling really tired or just things come up to create interruptions. If I have this plan and I have only 12 weeks to achieve it, then I'm more likely to stick to it, to say no to things that are going to get in the way of me making progress. So that's what it's about, 12 weeks at a time. It doesn't matter where you are in the year. You can always start a 12-week year, and you can do many 12-week years within a year. So it's very helpful in that way for that time-bound factor. The first step of starting a 12-week year process to me is the most fun, and that is the visioning part. This is not something you need to do every time you're doing a 12-week year, unless you are aware that your vision has changed or that it's been a while since you've done it, because sometimes the things that we want to do change, but if we don't take the time to check in and see, then we might get attached to old ideas of what we wanted and discover, oh, that's actually not true anymore. So it is good to do it once in a while. I say at least once a year. So I recently did a visioning exercise for myself, and it provided so much clarity for what I would like my life to look like within 3 years. 3 years is a reasonable time span for you to think ahead and imagine what the possibilities are 3 years from now. And there's a lot you can do in 3 years to help create that. So what I invite you to do for this visioning process is set aside some quiet time with no distractions, and close your eyes and just let your mind wander a little bit. So what you'll do is you'll imagine that you put yourself 3 years into the future, and you're picturing, envisioning what your life looks like and feels like 3 years from today. And really let the ideas bubble up and take shape and take form. Try not to direct it too much. See what shows up for you. What would feel really good for you, for your day-to-day to look like? You could start with imagining yourself waking up in the morning. What is your first priority? What are you doing first thing in the morning? And progress through your day, and what are you up to? What are you being recognized for? What are you working on? And how does all of that feel? How you feel in your life is more important than what you're doing. Of course, they are connected, and one will inform the other. So really pay attention to how you want to feel, and what are the things that you're doing in your life that are helping to create those feelings. So give yourself, I would say, you could set a timer 5 to 10 minutes just to let your imagination wander, and then take out a journal or your laptop and write it all down. So what I like to do is put the date at the top as though it's 3 years in the future, and I'm writing it in present tense as though I am there. And I'm describing my life. I'm describing what I'm up to. I'm describing some of the key relationships in my life and how they feel. I'm describing how I feel. And it's such an inspiring and energizing exercise. You'll feel the excitement once you connect to those possibilities and you imagine your life that way. And just a disclaimer here, this doesn't mean that your life isn't wonderful right now. It probably is, and that's great. So you're just continuing to build on possibility, and having something that we want to work towards helps create motivation, energy, creativity, innovation, all those things. It's time to start crafting your 12-week year. And I'm going to walk you through that process for me. I use a notebook when I am formulating my 12-week year initially, because I just think better on paper. What I do after I write it down is I then put I outline it into an app called Todoist, which helps me with task tracking and things like that. I also put things in my calendar. So I have all these ways that I keep track of what I'm up to. But for the initial thinking, I like to write things down. So you're going to see me writing down my 12-week year process, and I'll walk you through those steps now.
Okay, so it is time to start drafting our 12-week year. And the first thing you need to do is pull out your calendar and decide what is your start date and what is the end date. So I pulled out my calendar, and this was happening last week, and I decided I wanted to start my 12-week year on January 12th. So I circled that date, and then I just counted the rest of the weeks to get my end date, which is April 5th. And it's important to know that time frame because you're going to use it to set due dates for your milestones, your major milestones that feed into your 12-week goals. And I will explain those momentarily. The next step is to establish your 12-week goals. And these are the big overarching goals that you want to achieve, have achieved by the end of your 12 weeks. And it's important to be both realistic while also stretching yourself. So you don't want to make it so easy that there's absolutely no challenge, but you don't want to make it so difficult that you're just going to get frustrated and give up. So you need to look at the 12 weeks ahead of you and decide what will time allow in terms of what extra thing can you add to your plate and make space for, and how many goals do you want to work on over the course of these 12 weeks. For me, I chose 3 goals because 2 of them are highly interconnected, and the third one is something that is definitely a part of my is something that is going to support my overall vision and just make my life easier. So the first goal is to finish 3 new paintings. The second goal is to publish 6 YouTube videos. And the third goal I'm calling Get My Affairs in Order. And there's various aspects of my life that I've been putting off that I want to get done so that I don't have to think about them anymore, and it will put my mind at peace. That third goal was something I struggled with a little bit because I also want to learn Spanish. That's something that's really important to me in my life right now. But the truth is, getting my affairs in order is more urgent, and that's why I ultimately decided to make that the third goal, knowing that in my next 12-week year, I can put Spanish in there. The next step is to outline the major milestones for each goal that are also called tactics. These are the things that are going to keep propelling you forward. And every time you outline your week, you're going to come back to this list and see what you've committed to, whether it's a weekly task. That's something that is called a lead indicator. So it's something that you do consistently with the objective of achieving your goal. And there are also lag indicators, and those are the things that you achieve. So in this case, I'm outlining my indicators for my painting, and I want to make sure that I am devoting a certain number of hours every week to painting. Because if I'm not doing that and I just say, okay, I'm finishing painting 1 on this date and painting 2 on the next date, etc., but I'm not actually making time for it, it's not going to get done. So what I've done here before before committing to a certain number of hours is I realize I need to actually outline my entire week and decide how I'm going to structure my week to make sure that I'm setting aside hours for creating art. And I'm someone that likes to have a routine and to have a routine that I can stick to most weeks. Obviously, it's important to be flexible sometimes, but I strongly believe that if you have a routine in place, you're going to be more successful. Plus, there are certain things within my routine that are just really important to me. Number one being working out. That is something that is extremely crucial for my mental, emotional, and physical well being, and it's a non negotiable for me. So I needed to make time to just sketch out my weekly plan. And then from that, I could determine how many hours and when I can devote to painting. After I mapped it all out, I decided I would spend 2 evenings a week after work creating art. So I set aside 2 hours on each of those evenings and another 2 hour chunk on the weekend for painting. And so that means that one of my tactics is 6 hours a week creating art. And other things I put into my weekly calendar were one evening a week when I go to my co-working space and I have my nice big monitor there. That's when I'm going to work on video editing. So I set aside time for that. I also figured out when in my calendar I'm going to work on getting my affairs in order, and also when I'm going to do my weekly accountability meetings with myself. And that is something that I will explain a little later as well. After I figured out my schedule and therefore my lead indicators, then I felt like I could be more clear about my deadlines for actually completing the paintings. So the rest of the tactics were pretty straightforward for this one. I just wrote painting one complete, painting two complete, painting three complete, and I selected my due dates. And these due dates are important. You need to, again, be honest with yourself about what's going on in your life. So I know that there's one week in March that I'm going to be away for a work meetup in Vancouver. And so I need to be realistic about when that painting is due and give myself an extra week than maybe I gave the other paintings because there's going to be that interruption. So those are the kinds of things that you need to be aware of. Just what are those realistic interruptions that you're going to have in your calendar, and set your due dates accordingly. That is really all there is to it, to the actual planning of your 12-week year. So what I did for that first goal, I did for the other two goals as well. So by the end, I was clear on all the major lead and lag indicators for each of those goals. And now I have this document that I can come back to each week that I'm planning my week out to consult and see what I have on my agenda for that week. Now it is time to actually map out a week in the 12-week year. And something that I like about this process that I find very manageable is you only need to plan 1 week at a time. You don't need to sit down and have all 12 weeks figured out right at the beginning. And I find that this allows you to have that flexibility and make shifts and changes if things come up unexpectedly and you need to move things around. So it's pretty easy at this point because you've already mapped out your lead and lag indicators, and now you're basically figuring out the smaller details. So for my first goal, which was to complete 3 new paintings, my goal for this first week is to spend 6 hours of the week creating art. And I figured out what are the things that I want to accomplish that are going to help me actually create my first painting. So that means going through my sketchbook. This series is going to be called the India series. It's focused on my trip to India that I did in 2023. And so I'm going to review my sketchbook, review my photos, and basically start planning out the paintings that I want to make, and then gather the materials for my first painting. And once I feel good about what I'm getting done for that goal, I move on to the next one, which is publishing 6 YouTube videos. And this goal for this week is to finish this 12-week year video. So I jotted down the things I need to do in order to get that done. And then, of course, moved on to my third goal, getting my affairs in order and the steps that I'm going to take to move that goal forward.
So what I'm going to do now is actually go into my Google Calendar and time block out my schedule for the week, so that it's really clear to me what I'm doing when. And I'm also going to add these tasks into Todoist, which is a program that I use for my work tasks and for my personal life tasks. And that way everything is consolidated, and at the beginning of the day I can just see all my tasks for the day for work and for life outside of work. So that is how I keep myself organized with all of this. It's about more than organization, though. We can be the most organized person in the world, but if we don't have a way to make space in our lives for these things that we want to do, and to create boundaries to make these things happen, then chances are things are going to come along that will easily throw you off track. So in a future video, I will talk about some of the things you can do to help really stick to these goals that you set and create the space and the boundaries in your life to make sure that they happen. So that is coming soon. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel so that you get notifications when these videos come out. And if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you didn't like it, you can give it a thumbs down, and definitely feel free to drop any questions you have about the 12-week year method. And I would also love to hear what some of your goals are. If you're doing a 12-week year, what is it that you are working on? What do you want to accomplish? All right, see you soon.